Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. The Curse of Oak Island find enemies in Canadian government. The guys on the Curse of Oak Island are facing another obstacle. The Canadian government stepped in to try to stop them from excavating on the island. However, the goal was to find underground passages to what they believe is the treasure. Unfortunately, red tape is getting in the way. Here is what is slowing down the search for treasure on Oak Island. Canadian government put stop to Curse of Oak Island excavation. The Curse of Oak Island saw the team find a possible secret chamber underground around the garden shaft. Doug called Dumas Contracting Ltd. and hired them to come in and work as excavators to dig them down and into these possible chambers. They believe they found passageways to a possible buried treasure on the island. This led the team to have to wait because it would take 50 days to go down about 75 feet. They believe that they might have just found a series of tunnels and chambers that will lead to the mythical hidden treasure. They also believe that one of the artifacts they found had Viking origin, which dates back even more years than they expected. Now there is a new problem. The Canadian government said that hiring excavators means that the Llageni brothers need a mining permit. While they are not technically mining, it is still red tape that has once again made the government an enemy to the team finding treasure. However, not all fans seemed surprised. One fan took to Reddit to write, "The Canadian government wants to prevent a group of well-documented gold diggers from blindly rebuilding a wooden shaft that goes down an unknown depth on an island where 6 treasure hunters have already died doing the exact same thing, and they're the villains in this situation. The Canadian government has interfered before. This isn't the first time the Canadian government has interfered in the Llageni brothers' treasure hunting on the Curse of Oak Island. In 2021, the Canadian government shut down a large part of the dig operations on the island. This was when the Llageni brothers' team found several centuries-old indigenous artifacts. It happened during Season 9 when the team discovered First Nation Micmac pottery shards on the island. This caused Marty Llageni to say on an episode at the time they would lay low on archaeological methods, waiting for the dust to settle. What resulted from that was just a tightening of regulations for the show. At the time, the Llageni stopped regular archaeological methods for alternative digging techniques. They expanded on that this season by using new technology to map out areas under the island, which allows them to find clues and possible entry points without unnecessary digging. However, the excavation brought about a new conflict with the Canadian government. In the dimly lit war room, Rick and Marty Llagena sat around the weathered table, maps and documents sprawled in front of them. The ancient island of Oak Island had held its secrets for centuries, but the brothers knew they were getting closer. The mysterious artifacts, strange structures, and cryptic clues they had unearthed were pieces of a puzzle that had confounded treasure hunters for generations. But as the brothers pored over their findings, a new threat loomed, one they hadn't anticipated. This time, it wasn't the island's treacherous booby traps or the relentless grip of the swamp that posed a danger. It was something far more modern and sinister: the Canadian government. Over the past few months, whispers of bureaucratic resistance had grown louder. It started with delayed permits and unusual restrictions placed on their excavations. There were murmurs that certain historical societies and government officials were no longer pleased with the international attention Oak Island was receiving. At first, Rick and Marty brushed it off as the usual red tape. After all, treasure hunting was a risky, often controversial endeavor, but now they couldn't ignore the feeling that something darker was at play. One evening, as the fog rolled in off the coast of Nova Scotia, Marty received a phone call. The voice on the other end was low, measured, and unnervingly calm. "Mr. Llagena, there are forces within the government that do not want you to continue your search. Some things are better left buried." Marty's heart raced. "Who is this? What are you talking about?" The line went dead. The brothers convened with their trusted team, Craig Tester, Gary Drayton, and Jack Begley. As they shared the unsettling developments, the room filled with a tension none of them had felt before. They were no strangers to challenges, but this was different. This wasn't just the island fighting back. It was people, powerful people, and they had no idea how deep the opposition went. Gary Drayton, the team's metal detecting expert, leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "I've seen this before," he said. Back in the UK, when we'd get too close to something valuable, suddenly the permits would dry up, or we'd get fined for the smallest infractions. It's like they don't want the truth to come out. Craig Tester, ever the pragmatist, spoke next. We need to be careful. We don't know who we're dealing with or how high up this goes. But I'll tell you one thing, if they're trying to stop us, it means we're closer than ever. Determined not to back down, Rick and Marty decided to dig deeper, not just into the island, but into the web of bureaucracy that was beginning to entangle their efforts. They'd hired a private investigator to look into the officials who had been stalling their permits and scrutinizing their every move. What they uncovered sent a chill down their spines. It wasn't just a case of cautious government oversight. There were secret meetings being held between certain government officials and members of historical societies that had long been opposed to the treasure hunts on Oak Island. These groups believed that the island's true value lay not in the treasure that might be hidden beneath the ground, but in the history that was already known, history they felt was being desecrated by the constant digging and drilling. But there was more. Buried in the bureaucratic paperwork were references to a classified government file labeled Operation Aegis. The file was heavily redacted, but what little information they could gather pointed to a covert operation dating back to the 1950s, involving the Canadian government and an unnamed foreign power. The operation's objective: to keep the island's secrets hidden at all costs. As Rick and Marty dug further into the file's contents, they began to piece together a terrifying possibility. What if the treasure they had been searching for wasn't just gold or jewels? What if it was something much more dangerous? Something that governments, both past and present, would go to great lengths to keep hidden? The deeper they went, the more resistance they encountered. The government's restrictions tightened. Inspections of their equipment became more frequent and intrusive. They were fined for minor infractions, and the media, once supportive, began publishing articles questioning their legitimacy. Anonymous sources claimed the Lajeunesse were disturbing sacred ground, and that their search was reckless and disrespectful to Canada's heritage. Despite the mounting pressure, the team refused to give up. But the opposition was relentless. One day, while excavating near the infamous Money Pit, their equipment was mysteriously sabotaged. Wires were cut and valuable data was lost. Gary Drayton found footprints in the mud, fresh and definitely not from their team. "They're trying to scare us off," Jack Begley said, his voice shaking with frustration. "But why? What are they so afraid we'll find?" Rick Lagina, ever the optimist, stared out at the island's fog-shrouded horizon. "We're not just searching for treasure anymore," he said softly. "We're searching for the truth." The truth, it seemed, was more elusive and dangerous than they had ever imagined. As the weeks passed, the brothers received more veiled threats. Their private investigator uncovered evidence that suggested a shadowy organization had been monitoring Oak Island for decades, ensuring that certain discoveries remained hidden from the public. This group had ties to the highest levels of government and was rumored to have silenced other treasure hunters in the past. But Rick and Marty were undeterred. They had come too far, invested too much, to walk away now. The curse of Oak Island wasn't just about treasure. It was about the powerful forces that would stop at nothing to keep its secrets buried.